Welcome everyone on the next episode of our webinar series BIM for manufacturers and wholesalers. Today we will cover the topic of various BIM configurators, configurable products. If you're not familiar with our webinar series, I definitely recommend you to check our website bimstreamer.com, where under the event section you would be able to find the recordings from the previous episode. And we've recently released the episode called BIM Omnichannel, where we were covering the topic of different destination place where the BIM libraries of the manufacturer could be actually published. I'm pasting you the link within the chat window to this webinar. So if you're interested in checking the recording, this is definitely the place where you could navigate to. But let's get back to our today's agenda. Let's focus on today's topic. So at the very beginning, I would like to put a bit more light on what kind of products actually do require configurators and why. Later on, we will cover the different strategies, how we can apply to configurable products. And at the very end, as usual, I would like to address the topic related to how this can actually be implemented on a live demo. Okay, as usual, I invited Adam Konca. Adam is the product owner of BIM Streamer project, and he was also responsible for preparing the demo as usual. So nice to have you here, Adam.
Hello, everyone. Nice to meet you.
Okay, so guys, let's get back to our general topic of today's webinar. So which products actually do require configurations? So the answer is relatively simple, and it doesn't only refer to actually the building materials products, but in general to all. So all the products which are actually made of subcomponents, all the products which are made of sub-products, which actually create some sort of a system, do require to have a configurator. And the reason why is because just try to imagine the number of possible variations that you might end up with if you have, let's say, this example, this bike, for instance. I know it's very abstract, but I think that is quite vivid to understand to everyone. So let's just imagine that if you would like to configure a bike for yourself, you might have a different frame. You can have either the aluminum frame or the carbon frame. You can have a different dimensions for the wheels. You can have a different brakes. You can have a different seats, and plenty of others components that actually the bike is made of. So if you calculate the number of possible variations, then the possible variants of such products might even grow exponentially every time you're actually adding a new option for specific component. And now let's just imagine that you're a Revit designer and you have all of these variations in a form of the types within the Revit family type, and then you wanted to hit the drop down and select the variations that you're interested in. So you can actually end up with 100, if not 1,000 of possible variations in such a drop down, and in the long run it's just not usable. So if so the long story short is that the products which do have several components and the number of possible variations of such components are very great, these are the perfect matches for the configurators. So let's get back to our building materials examples. Which materials actually do require the configurators? So here are the few examples. Of course, these are not all of them, but just gives you the general overview what it can be. So one of them is definitely the lift shafts. So the lift shafts may have either one lift door or two lift doors. They can have a different cabin. They can have a different number of levels. They might be made of different materials and so on. The other example are, for instance, roofs. The roofs, especially the ones which has a different layers, which might be configurable, can also be a perfect match for the configurator. But from something more, let's say, understandable for great majority of you, the furnitures, for instance, the office furnitures, or the furnitures like from the IKEA cabinet system, where you have different drawers, where you have a different hangs, shelves, and so on. These are also the possible way of using the configurators, because the number of variations is pretty great. Doors, different frames, different hinges, different handles. Another example for the configurators. Facade, although facades are slightly different case, because facades are treated differently, especially in Revit, because they need to reside in the project file, not necessarily family file. But in the long run, this is still definitely the case for the configurator. And the power outlets, yeah, different feelings for the power outlets. For instance, for the USB, for the radio, different power outlet standards for the UK, for the Europe, for the US, China, and so on. So you can just imagine a possible number of variations that kind of power outlets might have. So these are in general the products which are suitable for having a configurator. But how we would like to address the configurations in general, how we would like to provide this configuration. I already mentioned that having that in a form of a single family is not quite handy for the end user. So what are the options? Yeah. So the first option that we might have is to create a single BIM file which has all of the possible variations inside in a form of subcomponents. In Revit, we call that the nested families. So you have, for instance, this. Let's use this power outlet because we will use this example also during the demo. So let's stick to that. So we can have a different frames. We can have a different power outlet standards for the UK, for the US. We can have a different colors. So the number of variations is pretty great. Is pretty great. And in general, it's quite easy to set up that kind of file. Well, easy is of course pretty much subjective in terms of what you mean by easy, but in general, all you need to have in this approach is to have a Revit designer who is able to prepare the family with a nested components, and then put all of the logic of configuring and selecting specific variations of product setup within the single file. And that's all you need. So when you prepare that kind of file, you can just send it over to the designer, and they can just work with that out of the box with no extra software. They can just upload that into your BIM project. And when it comes to the pros, that would be pretty it. But each solution has its cons. So let's focus on the cons. So every time we're putting a nested component inside the BIM file, we're increasing the heaviness of such BIM file. Let's just imagine that you're actually building a huge hospital where you have a bunch of 80 or 100 different products for the electrical installation, just for the electrical installation, with a bunch of different variants. And imagine that each and every file is pretty heavy in terms of megabytes. So if you would like to create this single fat configuration file for single system, it might weigh something like 30, 50, sometimes even above 100 megabytes. Just imagine that you have a huge investment with a bunch of similar files. And if you would like to load your BIM project from the ground up, probably you can go for a launch because it might take a while. So utilizing the single configuration file for the designers, just from the perspective of how heavy these files might be, is one definitely disadvantage. The other disadvantage that you might be not aware of is that in the end, once the designers are actually set up the actual configuration they are interested in, they ending up with a bunch of variants which they don't really need. So what they need to do is that they just need to purge them. They just need to remove all the necessary variants because they are worthless for them, and it just slows their project down. It just slows their computer down. So they have the extra work of actually cleaning the project with unnecessarily data. The other thing that we should also keep in mind is the way how we would like to maintain this configurator on manufacturer side. Let's just imagine that I don't know, you're using, for instance, a fitting or some sort of a connection component in your configurator, and you would like to use the very same connection component in several other configurators, and then something gets changed, and you need to change your configurations connection. You need to change this component. You need to change its data. You need to change its geometry. You need to change something in general, but you are using this component in different configurators. Then you need to update these configurators one by one. Then you need to inform all the end users that actually download these configurators previously to update to download the latest file. Once they download the latest file, they need to again purge all the unnecessary data that they removed before, which gets more frustrating for them, and so on and so forth. I think that it's pretty vivid to understand the issue. The other thing is that it's very hard to adapt to specific regions. Let's just use this power outlets as a perfect example, but we can also use, for instance, the piping system, which also varies depending on regions. But let's focus on power outlets, which I think is a bit simpler. So we have a different power outlet standard for the UK, for Europe, US, and around the globe. And let's just imagine that we have a single system with all possible variations of such power outlets within just a single file, which is very heavy. It slows our project down quite drastically, and we actually don't need that. 99.9% of this variation are worthless from the perspective of our project. So, but since this configuration file was prepared as a whole system for the whole world, then we have a bunch of unnecessary data. So these are more like the consequence or the disadvantage of having everything within a single file. But is there any other option to address the configurators? And of course there is. So instead of having a single FAT file, we can just generate the files on the fly. In this approach, we have only the configuration that we've selected. We don't contain all the unnecessary data which are not relevant for the configuration that we're not interested in. It's quite easy to adapt to a different region because we can provide components which are relevant for region A but are not relevant for region B. And how we can actually address that? Yeah, so the simplest case is to actually address that using the plugin. The question is whether this is the correct approach. And believe it or not, the designers doesn't like to have a plugin at all. And the reason behind that is relatively simple. So let's just imagine that you have a mobile, you have a phone, you have a smartphone, and you have 50 different mobile apps for buying an online tickets. one app for buying a ticket from Stuttgart to Frankfurt, one for buying a ticket from Frankfurt to Stuttgart, the other one for buying the ticket from, I don't know, from Warsaw to Prague or wherever you can imagine. Yeah, so you're ending up with the 50 apps, which actually in the long run does pretty much the same. And the same refers to the designers. Let's just imagine that the designers needs to install 50 or sometimes even more different plugins which were developed by different software team in a different way, using the manufacturer products, which every manufacturer we know that works with their own products slightly in a different way. But in general, they all need to do pretty much the same, but maybe depending on the investor preference, in project A, they are about to use this configurator. In project B, they would like they need to use that configurator, and so on and so forth. In the long run, they have they have this plugin list on in their BIM software, very large, but in generally all the plugins does pretty much the same. Not mentioning the fact that too many plugins can also slow down the loading time for the BIM software such as Revit. Maybe it's not that time consuming when it comes to working with the project, because the plugin gets loaded and the designer can work with that without any obstacle. But the loading time, so when you actually open the project and needs to initialize the plugin, can be quite frustrating as well. So this is one disadvantage. So the in general, the designer doesn't like to install too many plugins. The other thing is that sometimes it's not even possible to work with plugins at all. Very often, the design firms buys several license of the full Revit license, but in order to reduce the cost, a great number of modelers are actually working with the Revit LT. So let's say that I'm a member of the design firm. I know that my BIM coordinator works with the full version of Revit, but I was only given the LT because the license is cheaper. On the LT, it's a huge limitation when it comes to working with the BIM libraries, with the plugins. So I'm not even able to install the plugins to work with that. So I'm actually.
I think Marcin is off, so I'll try to continue. Okay, so coming back to Revit plugin issues, why designers don't want to use them. Marcin told almost all cases why they don't want to use them. The last one is problem with creating the family repository. Very often designers need to use dedicated families for the project, and taking them from different Revit plugins might be an issue for them. Hello, Marcin. Are you
Okay.
there?
I'm back. Apology, I had some connection issue, but I think that we can. I think that we can continue. Yeah. So the configurator without the plugin. Is it actually possible to have the configurator without a plugin? And the answer is yes. You can actually work with the web-based configurator. With the web-based configurator, you can actually provide a light files. These files contains only the variants that the designers are actually interested in. It doesn't require any software, so we are not limited to work with a full version of Revit, because we don't need to install any add-ons. We can just simply open our web browser, navigate under a specific URL, select things that we're interested in, and just download the result. And it's also easier to set up by the modelers of the manufacturer. It might sound odd that it's easier, but it is, because let's just imagine that you would like to place all the configuration and the selection variantation within the logic of the single FAT BIM file. If you would like to provide all of this list of conditions that if you selected this component, then you are not able to select that component, that and that, and so on and so forth, and you would like to place all of that within the BIM file, then it's very hard to maintain it by the modeler itself. With such option, the conditions within the final BIM file and the templates that are used for generating the final outcome are relatively simple. And the other thing is that it's also more convenient for the end users, for the designers, because we're not placing there a lot of unnecessarily files, a lot of unnecessarily data, which are required for preparing the configurator and which are not relevant after the configuration is specified. So the web-based configurator is definitely a lighter version of the plugin. It doesn't mean that you're not able to work with plugin, but you shouldn't limit yourself to that, as there are lots of cons that we've mentioned before, which recommends not to use the plugin, or at least limit the utilization of plugin. And on today's demo, we would like to present you how we could utilize that kind of web-based configurator. But at this stage, I would like to hand over the floor to Adam. And Adam, the floor is yours.
Okay, thanks, Marcin. So for today demo, we have prepared the power outlets products. These are the products we are going to use in the configurators. We have prepared one master model full power outlet product, which will be used as the base, and several parts RFA families, which will be used as parts of the variants we will create during the using the configurator. Second thing we have prepared are 3D previews of these elements. We will present them as OBJ files. Here we have several options how to prepare them. The easiest one is, of course, to create them manually. However, when you have thousands of variants, it would be hard to prepare them manually. So one of the way of preparing the previews is to pre-generate them using the BIM Streamer platform, or use, for example, high-resolution images to present the selected option.
So the previews, Adam, just to be clear, the previews are used as a preview image when you're selecting that on the web. Is that correct?
Yes, exactly. On top of that, we have the Excel, where we have full configuration of the all possible variants and steps to create each variance, and of course information how the result Revit family should be prepared.
Okay, so is it when it comes to this Excel file, are we limited this Excel file to power outlets, or we can actually configure any kind of products?
No, the power outlets is just the sample that we have used. However, you can prepare data for any kind of products.
Okay.
After selecting the options, we will send the request to Revit, where the specific operation will be prepared, and the result variant will be generated and returned to the user.
Mm-hmm.
So let's play the movie. We have prepared the package where we have the master model, assets, so the parts from which we are creating the selected variants, the master model, which is used as a base, the preview elements, and of course the Excel with all information.
So if I may ask, so the elements, if you could navigate back a bit to the folder, if you see the elements are the components. The master model are something like a parent family, and the rest are the previews. Is that correct?
Yes, exactly.
Okay, so I see that one person says that it has some issue with seeing the video. So is there, if you have also, if someone else also have this issue, please note that on the chat. And in the meantime, I will also include the link to the video in the chat window if someone is not able to see that live here. Okay, Adam, you can go ahead.
Okay, so in the first row, we have information about the options that will be available on the web form. Then in the columns, we have all possible data for these options. And each row define the available variant of the power outlet.
So if I may ask, so the row number 1, I understand that I can modify that. I can add different options, right? So I can add new column, and then I would be able to actually provide some new options to the configurator. Is that correct?
Actually, it's full dynamic. So whatever you have typed here, that will be available as the option of the configurator. So you can write there something else and define the values in the next rows, and that will show up on the configurator. When you go further, we can see that in column H we have result the variant of the final family. In column I, we have the master model that should be used for that instance. And in column J, we have the operation, what Revit should do with this master model to prepare the selected product for the user. So we can see that the first family, nested family, is based and is not changed. And then we are replacing the component WXP 0102 to the family that we'll take from the results. So in that case, it will be WXAP wildcard. So we can use here a lot of possible options. And with the second nested family, we are doing completely the same. So we are just replacing the existing nested family in the master model with the one we have just selected.
Okay, so in general, in the J column, we're more like programming the configurator a bit.
Exactly.
Okay.
And in that example, we are just replacing the existing nested families, but we have here a lot of options. We can add a new family to the existing model. We can inject attributes in dedicated languages. We can inject attributes in a specific specification. We can set checkboxes for some options in nested families or in main family. So actually, everything that can be done manually in Revit can be done also automatically by the configurator.
So question though here, do I really need to be a Revit specialist in order to prepare that kind of configuration for that kind of product?
Actually, no.
Okay. So the only thing that I actually need is to ask someone to prepare the component, and then I can program how to work with that component, how the configurator should assemble different subcomponents in a form of a system.
Yeah, someone have to prepare the base families and prepare the scenario, how the variants should be generated, and then it can be done automatically by the system.
Okay. So
let's go further. In the next step, we have the configuration of the fields. So here we have defined which column types and for which values there is available some kind of preview. So if the preview will be available, then it will be visible on the configurator. If not, the box will be empty. Let's go further for the configurator. Yes, now we are selecting some options. We are going to download 3 different configurations. As you can see, depending on the values we are selecting on the form, we have different previews, and we are downloading different variant products.
So what we're currently seeing is actually a web page which was configured based on this input that you've just presented before. So this Revit files, this previews, and this Excel sheet. Is that correct?
Yes, we are uploading this Excel, and this, what you can see out here, is done automatically. And the last variant is the one with cover. You can see that it looks completely different than the other two. And here is how it looks in Revit, what we have just downloaded. We can see that there are different, these variants are different. In the left top corner, you can see the master model. So this is the nested family that exists in the master model, and in the next 3 boxes you can see the variants families that we have downloaded, and you can see that the nested families has changed, and they have different colors.
Okay, so as a result,
we have replaced the plug, so the inside of the power outlet, and the frame. So these are the elements we have replaced.
Please correct me if I'm wrong. So in that case, as far as I understand, the final outcome contains only the components which we pre-selected. It doesn't contain any additional components that was all the possible variations. It doesn't contain all this logic of selecting that variant or the other one. It just contains the setup that was pre-selected on the web. And as far as I understand, the Revit generated the outcome only from the components which were pre-selected.
Yes, exactly. And that's the main idea of the configurators, to generate light components, light files, which can be used inside Revit without additional delays. So, because if we would like to prepare these power outlets as a single file, it would probably be very heavy, and I think hard to use, because designers would have to select some options in Revit to set different variant. As you said during the presentation, that he would probably would need to select some options from thousands of rows from drop downs from types. So it might be difficult.
So is it also possible that I can have a slightly different selections depending on specific needs? So let's say I would have a different power outlets for the UK. I would have a different possible selection for the US, for Europe. Maybe if I have some specific preconditions for specific sector, like for instance military, I might also have a different set of options. And once I selected is it possible that I can, let's say, select that I'm interested in, I don't know, options for the UK, and I would only see the configurations option for this region, or for military, because I'm doing some project for the military?
Yes, of course. This configurator can be expanded in many ways. One of them is to add there, for example, the country and language for which you would like to prepare the variant. And by selecting the country, you will reduce the number of possible variants to only that are available in this country. And for example, by selecting the language, you will inject the attributes in the corresponding language. So yes, everything is possible here.
Okay, I think that that was pretty quick summary of what the web configurator can brings to a table. The question though is that is it the web does the web configurator eliminates us from having the plugin based configurator, or is it also possible?
Actually, it's possible to create the configurator inside plugin. Actually, it doesn't matter where we will create it. So if someone require to have configurator inside Revit, it would work exactly the same way.
But we are not forced to use the Revit add-on because we can actually work with the web-based approach.
Yes, it depends on the designer and user what he will prefer. If both options are available for some manufacturers, for example, web configurator or plugin configurator, then designer can choose which option he would like to use.
Okay, I think that was a pretty good summary. Thank you, Adam, for that. Taking the occasion, I would like to invite you for the next episode of our BIM for Manufacturer series, where we will actually cover a very interesting topic, explaining why the designers don't really want to use the manufacturer BIM libraries. Some of these topics were also covered on this episode, but definitely check the next episode because we will tell you a way more reasons why the manufacturer libraries are not being so commonly used by the designers and how to overcome this obstacle to make them more attractive. So definitely recommend you to participate in our next episode. If you have any questions to our current webinar, just don't hesitate to write them down in the chat. We will wait something like 10 seconds. If we don't see that anyone is writing anything, then we will just close the session. On this place, I would like to thanks once again to Adam. Thanks for preparing the demo, for sharing with us the knowledge. In case you would like to have any, if you would like to write me some questions, just take a screenshot of this slide, and I would be happy to send you over either the slide deck or answer your questions. I do see some questions. What is the issue of updating the file information from the manufacturer perspective? Is it sufficient to change the data in the Excel file? The data is stored in the cloud and updated on the regular basis, right? Yeah, so the Excel file is just a way of importing the data, but of course the data can be somehow integrated with manufacturer database, like for instance product information management called PIM, or any other system that might be relevant in terms of storing the manufacturer data. But for this part, I would definitely recommend you to check the recording from the previous episode where we were covering the data migration from the product information management system directly to the manufacturer BIM libraries. What is the fee structure behind the configurator platforms? I don't fully understand the question. What is the fee structure behind the configurator platforms? So I would recommend you to write me down an email, take the screenshot, and we can schedule the meeting separately and discuss that in details. So thank you very much for your attention. Like I said, definitely recommend you to check the next episode of our BIM for Manufacturer series, and see you next time. Thank you very much. Bye.
Thank you very much. Bye.